Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to more Fallout 4 building tips. And today what I thought I would do is talk a little bit about how to add depth or layers into your builds. This is not really a series, this is just a couple of videos that I've come up with. This is a follow-up from last week. Just a couple of videos that I've come up with that I think will help you with your building. This one specifically is talking about how to kind of make... we talked about realism last week. This is going to take you to the next level, I guess, adding depth, adding layers. And I want to explain what I mean by that. So, let's get into it. So, G4, you talk about adding layers, adding depth. What are you talking about? Well, in Fallout 4, there aren't really any rules. You're only managed by your creativity. Obviously, there are some rules as far as the kind of order of building materials or parts or items go, but apart from that, it's pretty open. So all I'm trying to do with these last couple of videos is just to give you some ideas for your own builds. Just get you into a headspace where it opens up a whole lot of possibilities for you. So we're back in Starlight today. I've dropped down this preset here, and you can see there's not much to the preset. Now, this is from Dead Wastelands, and what I'm finding with some of the items for Dead Wastelands is if you drop them down, you have to put a foundation in, and you can see there's a foundation here, and it doesn't fit in with the environment. So I'm going to show you how to disguise that, and in the process, we'll talk about why I do it, and it's all about adding depth and realism to your builds, and there's a very simple way of doing that, but it's up to you what items you actually want to use. Now, obviously there was some conversation last week about how hard it is to do vanilla builds, and you really don't have a huge amount of items at your disposal to be able to do this. So most of this is done with mods today, but there's no reason why you can't do it with a vanilla build in your own settlements. It's just going to take a little bit more thinking and a little bit more creativity to make the realism happen for you. So the first thing I'm going to do is I stand back and I look at it and say, well, it's obviously a broken house that we find all over the Commonwealth in Fallout 4. How can I start to sell this fact that this is not sitting on a concrete block, and it should actually be there, and it's actually been there for a while? So first thing I decided to do is put these wooden floors in, which would fit in with the actual model of that building. So I'm looking here, I'm just going through and seeing, was it a dark floor? What kind of floor makes a difference? And the floor I actually picked to start with is the one I go with. So straight away the floor, you're suddenly taking away from the fact that it's a concrete block and putting it in a floor, and look, that already sells the fact that it looks as though it's been there forever. Now, obviously we have a lip there of the concrete foundation, and we need to get rid of that. So we'll move on to that next. Now, you might say, well, that's pretty simple, but you don't have to overcomplicate things when you're adding depth to your build. And certainly the technique I'm going to show you today, or some of the techniques I'm going to show you, aren't really overcomplicated. It's just about adding kind of things on top of things and seeing what actually works. It won't always work for you. You just got to be smart at how you do it and what items you've got, and it will depend on a whole lot of factors of what mods you're running, all kinds of stuff. So Dead Wasteland is fantastic. It has I think it's a Deadlands tab that has all kinds of manner of things that you can add that are really designed to be items that are from the Commonwealth that have been in some way damaged, or they have some level of destruction on them. And so I love that mod. If you haven't checked out Dead Wasteland mod yet, you should, because it does give you so many options on especially adding depth and what we're talking about today. So this does take a little bit of finagling in, and so I've sped it up a little bit for you, but you can see the idea that's coming. And you know, it's just experience will tell you what things work for you in certain circumstances, but the experiment is always the fun part of building in Fallout 4. And I'm still finding items even now, you know, years and years later after starting building, that work or are never considered. So the whole idea is to dive in, see what is there, play around with it, see if it works, stand back, have a look, give it a bit of a tweak, and just keep going until you're satisfied with it. Now, sometimes you have to have the vision and the experience ahead of time, because just one item like these will not work on their own, but it does contribute to the overall look that you're going for at the end. Okay, so as you can see, that's not looking too bad. We had to go and sleep for a bit. This is morning time again. That's not looking too bad. So far so good. It's starting to blend in now, and you can see it kind of matches what's around about the actual settlement, and we talked about that last week. So we have some obvious problems here. We have some gaps here that we've got to fill, some hole gaps. Now, the tendency for most people is to just put a wall in there, but the wall for me wouldn't blend in and look natural. You know, a metal wall or something like that wouldn't look natural. Now, Snappy House Kits actually has these walls. So if you've got Snappy House Kits, you could put a wall in that they have that for these buildings, and it would fix in there. What I'm doing now is I'm looking for ideas. I'm looking for something that might fit into this gap first, and that's always the one that will take so much time. So we start off with these wall fillers, and then I find these wooden fillers, and I'm like, yeah, that'll work. And I know from experience that these things stack on top of each other, which is another good thing. So I'd say, oh, it's going to snap. It will snap. You saw it. Once we get one in, it'll be fine. So I'm going to put a few out, and you're going to be shouting at me shortly saying, G4, you talked last week about repeating patterns. Now you're repeating patterns. What's the go with that? Well, we'll show you. Keep watching, because yeah, the repeating patterns. There we go. See, that's snapped in now. Of course, it's snapped in. There we go. It's all about the angles in Fallout 4. So there you go. We're starting to do repeating patterns, aren't we? And yeah, I told you not to do repeating patterns, but you'll see what I do with this in a bit. So again, the logic behind this is, what would the settlers actually do to fix their walls? They would most certainly try and find wood around the place and try and fix them. And yeah, this doesn't look pretty, does it? It doesn't look pretty at all. It's all repeating patterns. Oh my goodness, you've just broken your own rules, G4. And that's the thing about Fallout 4. You can break your own rules if you like. You don't have to stick to the rules. I'm just trying to give you some tips, but I'm only jesting. What this does is it gives me a foundation wall to build on and add depth to, and you're going to see what I'm going to do with it in a second. But I need something to add things onto, and that's why I'm doing it this way. And the fact that it looks like planks of wood that have just been nailed to the building is, again, selling the realism, selling the fact that this is what would happen in a real situation. And this video is all about depth and layers, and we're going to add layers now. And layers and layers and layers of stuff, and you're going to see that what you're seeing with all these repeating patterns are all going to just blend in and disappear. And so this is where the experimenting comes into, and add pieces and see if it works for you. If it doesn't work for you, take it out and put something else in. And you can see we're starting to mix it up now. This is what I'm talking about when I talk about depth. Adding layers on top of layers. Letting some of the background bleed through, and yeah, adding extra things. And just like I said, there's no rules here. That's the beauty of it. Look at that. Where's the repeating patterns now? They've gone. Well, they're still there, but you can see we're starting to hide all this stuff. So we got a hole there. We got to get rid of. So okay. It's going to stick to that eventually, or we'll find something else to stick to it and it'll bring it back. There you go. So, mix and match, try these things, see what happens, and yeah, you're going to start to see it blend in. and it's actually going to give you a whole new direction to go to with your builds. And let's just fast forward a little bit and you see where we've got to, and suddenly you see that actually it's actually starting to blend in. It's blending in, and that's the technique. That's as simple as it is. Now obviously we have to address this on the back side, but again, just play around with different ideas. We showed you this one last week with the fences and whatnot, and you start adding these pieces on, and all this stuff starts to disappear, but it's all contributing to the overall look of the building. So we're going to fast forward a bit now, and I'm going to show you something else that you can play around with, but I think you pretty much have got the technique down. Now you've kind of got the idea, and now it's open slather to what you do with it. I'm playing around with ideas here. Not everything will work. I'm just throwing things down, see what works, see what sticks. Does something stick? Does something not stick? Yeah, we'll come back in a bit. So next thing I left this in to show you what I do, how I find these pieces. I just flick through menus until we see something I like. You're going to see in a minute I find this arch way, but I'm just looking for ideas at this point on what I can add to this building to make it give it some depth. So I just flick through menus incessantly, as you can see, and I'm looking at this going, hang on, add that to the top. Possibly that might work. You could do that. It could be as simple as adding that on top, and eventually what I'd do is I'll find this specific item, and that starts to become the item that I use to build some depth into the build. And it's just a simple arch, as you can see, and I place it down and start to build around it. And as you're about to see, depth doesn't necessarily mean multiple layers. It can mean just a couple items, and you're going to see I'm going to find an item in a second, and I'm going to add that to it, and it suddenly just all starts to click in. Oh, hang on. Here we go. That there. We've got some rusty roof there in the archway. That's rusty roof. That's going to give some colour to the build. And then I step back and go, I actually like that. Obviously it's hollow in there, but we'll fix that later. Get it into the right configuration, into the right spot. And there you go. We've added depth with two items to the front of the house, very, very easily. It hasn't taken much, and if I push it across like that, I'm suddenly making a single door as well. Look at that. It's not quite working for me. I'm going to push it back across because it's kind of pushing into the roof. I'll put it there. And always do what I'm doing as well. Just walk at, have a look, see if it's working. If it's not working, get rid of it. But you can see that's something different. It's selling the scrappy house, but at the same time, we've added some depth to the build and some reality to the build. Okay, so that's as far as I wanted to go with the kind of a couple of building techniques that I used during this build. I wanted to bring you to the final build, and we'll show you sort of where we end up with all this, and I'll go through in a little bit of detail what I've added to give depth. But you can see it's just about experimentation and finding items that complement each other, and just continuing to build until you're satisfied. With this build here, I had a very kind of I had an idea, but I didn't really know where it was going to go. I just started building. I had a little idea what I wanted to do, and you can see how it's turned out. And I'll show you what items I've added to give depth, so that you get the kind of idea a little bit further. So we obviously put in this grass area, this area here, to hide the concrete, but also then put some grass in. So, and again, with Dead Wasteland, it has these grass mods, so I added more grass into the front of it to give it even more depth, and some bushes and all kinds. There's a stump there, so it's just adding layers on layers, adding these kind of pieces of paper onto the front of buildings always makes it look a little bit more derelict. And so I added these. Again, dead wasteland, you find all this stuff. These metal meshes on the front, you can see. And again, you can see the layering that we've worked with. Now, if you remember when we left this, there wasn't a door on here. So finding the right door is one thing, but I've actually used one of the fences, the junk fences for the door, but you wouldn't know it's there. You actually wouldn't know it's there. You can see some barbed wire above that kind of little roof on the front there. And there's a couple of stairs there, but again, adding layers, just having this simple fence on the side here is another way of layering. You can see I've just added bushes around the side here, layering there now. Completely different direction on the right hand side here, where I've just put a whole lot of junk items there. And I'll talk about these posts in a minute, but those sticking out the building are quite deliberate. So you can do this kind of thing with layering. Just add a whole lot of different furniture items to add some depth. And it was there to hide the wall, and you really don't notice the wall unless I point it out as you walk around the side of the building. So it's another way of doing it. And again, around the back, I picked up one of the vehicles from Starlight, plopped it down on top of what we'd already done. Another junk fence there, a bush, and that kind of hides the back and it layers the back of it. So, like I said, there's no hard and... What am I stuck on? Okay. There's no hard and fast rule about how you do this. Experiment away and see what works for you. The hardest part is where to stop, actually. Or is for me. Okay, so let's go in. Decoration is not a real... don't focus on the decoration in here. It isn't really important. This is not about decoration. This is about building structures. But you can see, again, these leaves add depth. You know, the fact that I've got a skeleton there adds depth to the believability of your build. And we go upstairs. So what I wanted to point out is I put these beams in. These beams here that stick out the wall. And again, leaving this area here without a roof, which is the kitchen, was quite deliberate. But I put these beams in, and then I built a floor. Now, again, talking about adding depth, put all these floor pieces in. And then I put the similar wall pieces in to build a wall. And again, using all the same technique. Here's the fence again. So it really is open to your interpretation to how you do this and what you want to use. And I encourage you just to experiment away, add this technique and just see where it takes you. It will add a whole lot of possibilities to your builds, and I think we're about to get attacked. So I'm going to say thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time. See ya!